we flippant and nonchalant and non-caring? Good. So this side gets the A plus, but I'm not so sure about this side. Any thoughts from this side? Mark, you look like you're ready to go with one.
Well, I was just going to say what Maria said.
Okay. All right. There's a lot of ways that we can get into trouble with our tongue, right? Lying, and we're going to start into with whispering and backbiting. So what is, or question four, where did the scriptures condemn whispering and backbiting? And I concentrated on New Testament, but if you've got some Old Testament passages, that's good too. Let's start with whispering. Where would we find whispering condemned? Matthew 5:44. Okay. What does that say? Okay. Okay, but I don't think, that's not this word whisper, though. Okay, Scott, what do you got? Proverbs? Okay. Yeah. ESV, a dishonest man spreads strife, and a whisperer separates close friends. What does that tell us about the whisperer? It's divisive, okay? Mm-hmm. Right. Okay. But in this case, this Proverbs, we're talking about a whisper. What does that do? It divides, but who does it divide? Friends. You mean, Scott, that a whispering can divide even your best friend? It can divide your maybe even your partner, right? Your spouse. It can divide those that you've been friends with for a long time, right? I think that's the point that the Proverbs is making. Good. Okay, right? Yeah. Yeah, so we hear those whisperings going on, whether it be about someone else or something else or some program or some thing that's going on. It's probably not a good thing to be whispering about that, right? So we need to stop that, because as this proverb reminds us, it can separate, right? It can separate close friends, but it can separate those in the church. It can separate the church. It can cause problems in the church. Good. Where else are we finding the condemnation for whispering? Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think that's right, that maybe it is somebody that is you're friends with or you're close with or whatever, but have you ever heard some juicy gossip from somebody that you don't really know that well? I mean, I think that's possible too, so I don't know that I would rule that out completely. So what about Romans 1:29? Okay. Good.
And just as they did not see fit to acknowledge God any longer, God gave them over to a depraved mind. Gave them over to a depraved mind to do those things which are not proper, being filled with all unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, evil, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malice. They are gossips, slanderers, haters of God, insolent, arrogant, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, without understanding, untrustworthy, unloving, unmerciful. That's a semicolon, but I guess I stopped there.
This,
Verse 31.
yeah, this is a very, this really sums up what Paul,
Comprehensive list.
yes, it is. A very challenging list that Paul seems to be identifying those that would attach themselves to the world, that would want to be like the world. And so in that list is this whisper. But John, I didn't hear you read, they are whisperers.
No, you heard me say gossip.
Okay, gossips. And that's the word we're talking about. What version are you using?
New American.
New American Standard? Okay. Does anybody else have a different word there?
ASV has gossip.
The ASV? ESV has gossips, right?
Standard says gossips. New International.
King James says whisperers.
New King James, ASV says whisperers. Most of the other modern translations are going to say gossips. And that's why I want us to look at this question 4 first, to make sure we know what we're looking at. Does anybody have a different word besides gossips or whisperers? I didn't find anything else, especially in those translations that most of us are going to use. That's kind of a weird word anyway, whisperer. It just doesn't roll off the tongue very well, but we generally know what that means. Okay, so let's move on beyond whisperer, that person that is the gossip that Romans 1:29 is talking about. What is backbiting? Where do we find that at?
I found a really interesting one. Bible in contemporary language. It says insufferable windbags.
An insufferable windbag, okay? Is that for whisper or backbiting?
I think it's whispers. It's got 28 through 32 in a paragraph. So, they keep inventing ways of wrecking lives. Bullies, swaggers, insufferable windbags, and they keep inventing ways of wrecking lives.
Okay. So where do we find the condemnation for backbiting? Second Corinthians 12:20 is what I found. Again, a same thing. I don't think most of our translations are going to have that word backbiting, but it's going to replace it with slander in the ESV, New American Standard, CSB, and the NIV. Does anybody have a different word there in 2 Corinthians 12:20 than slander or backbitings? And this is a similar kind of thing that Paul is dealing with the Corinthians here in his second letter to them, that he's going to find them who are going to be quarreling and having jealousy and anger and hostility and slander and gossip and conceit and disorder. So it's these negative kind of things that Paul is looking at them, their character, and seeing how they're made, and are they going to be acting like this when he comes and finds them, or is it going to be in the way that he wishes to find them, where they're putting on more of the fruit of the Spirit so that they have a harmonious relationship one with another. They're able to do the things in the work of the church that they need to, or are they going to be tearing one another down? And so those are the kind of words that we're looking at. So as we're going through this, we're looking at backbitings in the New King James mostly, and then slander in most of the other translations. Any thoughts or comments about that?
I was like one of the first times you had like Christians, the church in Acts 6, whenever the Hellenists who were like the Greek converted Christians versus the Hebrews, it talks about how they thought, you know, when everybody was giving to the church, giving to the widows and everything, the Hellenists were saying they weren't getting as much contribution from the saints, the needy saints, versus the Hebrew Christians. And so there was a lot of backbiting going on, hey, you know, we're giving all this money to the church, but we're not separating it appropriately. And so they were kind of going back and forth at each other. And, you know, that's when they first, you know, delegated some men to take care of that work.
Yeah, very good. I hadn't thought about that example, but that's a really good example. And that had the opportunity to tear the church into two pieces, right? But instead, what did they do? They fixed the problem, right? They made sure there was definitely a problem. There was a problem in the distribution of the food to those that needed it, and they appointed men to take care of that. And you know, in one sense, is that whispering or backbiting? I mean, if they're going at one another like that, yes. But if they're bringing that and raising that problem up, that's not the same thing as whispering and backbiting. So I think it depends on the context. So let's back up then to question 1 then. Explain how death and life are in the power of the tongue.
You read the rest of the verse, it kind of gives you the example that those who love it will eat its fruit. So if you love it, it will sustain you. There is benefit to it. You know, you do the opposite.
Right?
They starve you and kill you.
Yeah. You know, the tongue is what holds the power over life and death, right? How does it do that?
Think about it. If you are being tried on trial for something that's a capital punishment, someone could either lie and you'll be put to death, or if they tell the truth, maybe you're found innocent, or vice versa, you know, however that works out. But that one witness, then or if they're going to be truthful or false, could have you hanged or let you go free.
Right. I think our words far outweigh any other things that are going on to either destroy us or build us up. And that is the power of the tongue, I think. So if we misuse it, it's an unruly evil. It's full of deadly poison. You know, we might as well take that person out or that congregation out or that work group or that family and just line them up and shoot them. It's almost the same thing, right? That's what we're trying to get across. And so we need to be very careful with the way that we use our tongue. That we don't need to be tearing down, but we need to be building up. So what does this term whispering mean? Question 2.
Speak evil again?
Speak evil against. Good.
Just like the other translators say, it's a gossip, quiet gossip.
Okay. Quiet gossip. Yeah, and I think that's the distinction here between just regular slander is it is quiet. What connotation does that give off?
It's secretively, and sometimes it's something that somebody asks you, will you keep a secret? Can you keep a secret? Or
Mm-hmm.
I want that secret kept unknown to many few people.
So what's the yeah, right? And why is that different, or is it worse, or what makes it different? What makes it worse to be secretive about it? The intent.
If I go to Linda and say, hey, we're gonna have a surprise birthday party for Dallas, but don't tell anybody else, or we'll spread the word, but make sure Regina and Dallas don't find out. So it's a surprise. That's a good intention. But if I go up and say, oh, did you hear what so-and-so said?
Yeah, but what makes that worse when we just whisper it to Maria?
It's intended to damage someone's reputation.
Why do we whisper?
We don't want everyone else to hear it. Someone else might call us out.
What do they say? Plausible deniability? That's not what I said to her. Yeah. And so, it's, I didn't really do that. It's not that big a deal, right? We kind of can backpedal on it. But that's not really. What happens when we see somebody standing in the corner and, I mean, you reached over to Amy and did that, and I was like, oh, what is he saying back there? Yeah, you want to know. You want to know what's going on there, right? So it is can be tearing down and whatever. So it's this idea of defamation. You reached over to Amy and did.
Where Paul is warning the widows who would just be idle talkers. Some versions say that. That's also sometimes translated gossip. But really there is a difference in the Greek there. Referred to someone who is literally whispering. I mean, the passive form is just someone who talks quietly. But yet, I think Paul is contextually using the active form there in Romans 1 to suggest someone who it's almost like their whispers are going out and they're finding a lot of people, and a lot of people are believing them because a lot of people are also on the receiving end of the sin of gossip, which is abiding in it and spreading it themselves. Whereas someone who just talks to talk or talks because they want to be an idle talker is also a sin.
Yeah, they're both condemned. Now, whether it's open or closed, whether it's just we're talking to be talking, all of these things we need to be careful about with our language. So question 3, what's the meaning of the term backbiter? What is a backbiter?
Against or speak verbal, open.
Yeah, it is to speak against. So very similar to whispering, but it sounds like what it means, right? We talk behind somebody's back. So it is this idea of defamation, evil speaking, this putting this together of against and to speak. So it's to speak against, and so the backbiter then will speak openly against somebody, rather than doing it secretly or in hushed tones. So we need to be careful about that. Okay. What about question 5? What do you think motivates a person to backbite, defame, or speak evil?
A lot of things. Jealousy comes to mind.
Okay. How does jealousy play a role in backbiting or slander, these things we're talking about? Tearing somebody down, right? Maybe we think they've got a good role or whatever it is, right? But if we can tear them down, they'll be on our level then, or our level will be elevated somehow. Good. What else? Okay. Tell me how self-righteousness would cause us to defame somebody else. Okay, we said jealousy. Insecurity. What do we mean by that? We're insecure in our own righteousness, or you're just thinking about another way. Insecurity. So how would insecurity play a role in this? Causing me to want to tear somebody down, to defame them.
You want others to look at them bad. You want others to look at them badly, and maybe you just being the messenger.
Yeah. If I'm insecure, then I'm not feeling great about myself, right? And these other people shouldn't feel great about themselves either. So if I can make them feel bad, then they're going to be on my level, right? Good. Okay.
Or to make yourself look better.
Yeah. To make ourselves look better. So either way, whether they're up here in your eyes and you tear them down to your level, or you pull yourself up somehow in your own warped sense of thoughts about that, you think you're trying to get, well, you're probably not making it the playing field level, but you're trying to put yourself up here, aren't you? I mean, that's what we do as humans, and we need to be careful about that. And so we need to be careful about these kind of things that are going to tear people down. That we're not seeking to exalt ourselves. What's the opposite of exalting ourselves? I mean, humility, right, Tommy?
That's the example of the super apostles in 2 Corinthians that Paul used is people like Diotrephes who were exalting themselves, and John says in 3 John 1 that Diotrephes was slandering the apostles with malicious words. I mean, what drives someone to do that to people who Jesus personally sent out? Perhaps there could be some positive righteousness. You may be saying, well, they aren't actually the apostles, and they thought they were on God's side, and so in order to get rid of them quickly, you talk badly about them with a lot of people so they don't believe in them.
But what was Diotrephes' goal? Yeah, he wanted to be in charge. He wanted to rule. He wanted to be the person that everybody looked at. So we got a couple of things. We've talked about this already, but this idea of pride, tearing down others, having these things as self-centeredness, jealousy, insecurity, that's going to pull others down instead of advancing, right? What happens to a group that is full of jealousy and self-centeredness and insecurity and who are backbiting and slandering one another? They're going to eat each other. Angry, I mean, it's going to be chaos, right? Can you imagine coming into a group like that and sitting down and partaking of the Lord's Supper? What's that going to look like? I am not going to let him serve me the Lord's Supper. There is no way that's going to happen. Can you imagine them coming in and pushing them down or something? I mean, it would be just unruly and chaotic, right? We're not going to have that, right? And so we need to, instead of those things, we need to challenge ourselves. We need to humble ourselves and not have that pride. We don't need to be talking those things. We humble ourselves. That's going to help us eliminate this whispering and backbiting that's going on. So the book uses this thought of maybe a young wife might undermine her husband's respect for his mother. Why would a young mother think that kind of thing as the book lays out? Jealous? I mean, a mother, her little boy, I mean, there's a special relationship there, right? She's coming in the middle and she thinks, oh, well, I can't, and so it's going to be difficult. And so we need to be careful about those things. Another example, an employee could defame or tarnish colleagues who have superior skills or motivation. How is that going to, why is that a problem? I mean, is that a real world example? Does anybody work? Anybody have somebody that does some good things at work? Anybody see somebody get a promotion? Get a pay increase? And what are you doing over here? I'm over here eating beans for lunch, right? And what do? Well, I'll show him a thing or two. And so our thought is to tear them down. But that's not going to really help, is it? Our true self, our true nature is going to come out, and that's going to be pretty evident to anybody around about us. So it is not going to solve the problem.
Yeah, as a simple analogy that we've heard is, a bucket of crabs, and one of the crabs tries to climb out. Other crabs won't let it.
They just hold on to him, right? Pull him back down to my level, right? Good.
Think about it, that's what the Pharisees did to Jesus right there. Spoke out against them, had him crucified because they thought we could hold the power and we can do all this, and then Rome comes in and it just kills them all in the end, right?
Yeah.
Did them no good.
Right. Good points. Okay. The appeal of whispering, speaking evil in whispers allows one to attack without being easily detected or being held accountable. We talked about that a little bit. You whisper into somebody's ear and you can say, "Oh, I didn't really say that." It lets the slanderer go unchecked against those accusations. And so it is going to be something that is we don't want to do. Here's our interactive one. Which motive do you think most contributes to the act of whispering or backbiting? Insecurity, jealousy, fear of confrontation, pride, retaliation. We didn't really talk about retaliation. What is retaliation? Well, they did something to me. I'm going to get back at them. And how do we do that? According to this lesson, we tear them down through our words. We say things negatively about them. You imagine being at a workplace and this person's over there doing that, and you're just kind of looking at them or whatever. People know what you're talking about, and that's going to get around. And so it is something that we need to be mindful of and watch out for. So you all agree that retaliation can be up there. And I'll let you know, this is a very scientific poll. But it's really there for us to think about it. I think probably all of these things can contribute, and there's probably a list of other ways that would contribute as well. But we just need to be mindful of whatever's motivating us to tear one another down through our words, through whispering and backbiting. We need to be careful with that.
In a marriage like me and my wife, it's something I still have to work on. As far as the retaliation, like, say I'm doing something wrong spiritually and my wife corrects me. And I'm a leader. I know I'm it's a pride thing too.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to be like, why are you telling me this? I know you did this sin or something wrong, and you just want to tear them back down.
Yeah.
It's just, even just in the marriage, I see that.
Yeah. A brother comes to us and says, I notice, I've seen you do this. Well, I've seen you do way worse things than that, right? Get the speck out and the mote that's in your eyes. And so we need to be careful with those kind of things. We don't need to be going off to our buddy on our weekend trip and saying, well, you ought to hear what my wife told me just the other day. I'll get back. She won't hear about this, right? Because it's just between me and my buddy, right? But those things have a tendency to work their way back, don't they? And then what are we going to do? Are we going to be able to repair that relationship? I mean, we can, but it's going to take a lot of effort, isn't it, to overcome that?
That's usually the solution to a gossip, is to immediately go tell the person that the gossip was about exactly what's being said about them. Perhaps you have to gossip or slander while you do that as well, but if you just let it continue on in secret.
Yeah. Well, we need to, if we're part of that, we need to stop it right there. If we're part of this whispering and slander and backbiting, if we're part of that, we just need to stop it. Somebody comes to us and they want to tell us some juicy bit of information. Wait a minute. Why are you telling me this? I don't need to know this. I don't need to hear this.
Or just say, hey, if you're going to say it, say to that person too.
Yeah. Yeah, let's go right now. Let's go to them and let's talk to them, because it's a problem. We need to get it resolved. Just like we talked about in Acts 6. It's a problem. Let's get it resolved. And so that's good. Love that feedback. That's good. What dangers are posed by whispering and backbiting? This is kind of the heart of the things we're talking about already.
Breaking up relationships, breaking up churches, breaking up, and eventually, you're talking about going to hell just because you wanted to whisper and gossip.
Over talking? Over whispering about something? Scott, surely not. I can understand killing somebody, but not that.
That's what God said.
That sounds a lot like Satan in the garden.
Yeah. Yeah.
False sense of security. Because we've got to remember, God knows our intentions.
Yeah.
He knows no matter what.
Yeah. And it's not always about intentions, right? We can have the best laid intentions and still do what? Still be wrong. We can still sin, right? So it's not always about intentions, but I think there is a level of gossip that is about intention. And I think we'll talk more about this in some other lessons. But can we say the same thing about somebody in a positive manner that is not tearing them down and is trying to help? And can we say the same thing that is tearing them down? Sometimes, right? We can have those same conversations about somebody, but
As Scott just said, we need to have the conversation with the individual involved.
yeah. But sometimes we need some information, right? Maybe somebody has some information. I don't think it's always wrong to get information, and so that we can help that person. And so I think it's about what we're trying to do. As we've talked, some of the dangers, Scott had a good list. We can divide churches. We've talked about that. We can sow distrust and discord. We can bring judgment from God on those who hear. Psalm 105, whoever slanders his neighbor secretly, I will destroy. How much more clear can God be on this idea of talking about somebody in those quiet, hushed tones to tear somebody down? Matthew 12 reminds us that we're going to be judged on every careless word that we say. There is going to be accountability for this. God is going to hold us accountable for it. We have this false sense of security that we talked about. We can think that we're doing good, but God is going to hold us accountable for that. We're going to spread harm. Even though we're doing that in a secretive way, what's the next thing that happens when we have that whispering conversation?
Somebody passes it on or somebody overhears
Someone else.
Yeah. It may not be the next second, but it might be an hour, or it might be the next day or whatever. But somebody's going to have more and that conversation may not be in a whispered tone. It's going to be broader and wider, and so it's going to be causing widespread attack against somebody else. It's going to target that relationship, that individual, and it's going to try to bring that person down. It's irreversible, and we can't take that back. We talked about those words that leave our lips, that it's going to be very hard and difficult to bring that back, right? Proverbs 21:1, a good name is to be chosen rather than great riches. Okay, second bell. All right, I appreciate everybody's comments tonight. Be ready for question 8 on Sunday, and also be ready for lesson 6. I appreciate everybody's thoughts and comments. We'll have our worship bell. All right, I appreciate everybody's comments tonight. Be ready for questions, and also be ready for lesson 6.